kid. A house. Two burglars. Home Alone became one of the highest-grossing comedies ever made, earning over $476 million worldwide. But behind Kevin McCallister's iconic scream and those elaborate booby traps lies a story nobody talks about. The film almost never happened. The script was rejected dozens of times. Macaulay Culkin wasn't the first choice. The studio wanted to fire John Hughes. And the house. It wasn't even supposed to be the house. These are 15 hidden facts about Home Alone that even diehard fans don't know. Fact 1. John Hughes wrote it in 9 days while on vacation. John Hughes was on vacation in 1989 when he wrote the entire Home Alone script in just 9 days. He wasn't trying to create a masterpiece. He was procrastinating. Hughes was supposed to be writing a different film, but the idea of a kid defending his home kept nagging at him. So he sat down and wrote it in one feverish burst. The speed shows. The script is lean, almost skeletal. Minimal description. Sharp dialogue. Clear structure. Hughes knew exactly what he wanted. He'd spent years making films about kids and families. He understood the formula. But he also knew studios would hate this one. A movie where parents abandon their child and he has to fight criminals? That's dark. That's potentially traumatic. Studios want safe family films, not child endangerment comedies. Hughes was right. Every major studio rejected it. They said it was too violent for kids, too childish for adults. They said parents would be offended. They said the premise was unbelievable. Why would parents forget their child? How would a kid survive alone? The questions were endless, and Hughes had no answers that satisfied anyone. The script sat in development hell for months while Hughes tried to convince someone, anyone, to take a chance. Fact 2. Warner Brothers rejected it for being too mean-spirited. Warner Brothers was the first major studio to seriously consider Home Alone. They liked John Hughes. They'd made money with him before. But after reading the script, they passed immediately. The reason? Too mean-spirited. The executives felt the burglars suffered too much. The violence was too graphic for a family comedy. Kids would be scared. Parents would complain. Hughes argued the violence was cartoonish, like Looney Tunes. The burglars were incompetent buffoons, not real threats. The traps were funny, not sadistic. Warner Brothers didn't buy it. They said modern audiences were more sensitive than cartoon audiences. They said the film would generate controversy. They passed, and Hughes went back to pitching. 20th Century Fox passed for similar reasons. Disney passed because it didn't fit their brand. Columbia said Hughes had lost his touch. Every rejection stung, but Hughes believed in the script. He knew it was funny. He knew kids would love it. He just needed to find someone brave enough to make it. Fact 3. Macaulay Culkin wasn't the first choice for Kevin. When Chris Columbus came on board to direct, he had a different vision for Kevin McCallister. He wanted someone tougher, more street-smart. Culkin, who'd appeared in Uncle Buck, seemed too sweet, too innocent. Columbus auditioned dozens of kids, looking for someone with edge. He tested kids who could deliver sarcastic lines with bite. Kids who felt like they could actually survive alone. Culkin's audition was different. He played Kevin as genuinely scared under the bravado. When he delivered the famous mirror scream, Culkin made it real. Not funny. Not exaggerated. Real terror. Columbus realized he'd been wrong about what Kevin needed to be. Kevin wasn't a tough kid. He was a scared kid pretending to be tough. Culkin understood that instinctively. The studio still had doubts. They wanted a known child actor, someone proven. Culkin had one small role in Uncle Buck. That wasn't enough. Columbus fought for him, showing executives the audition tape repeatedly. He said Culkin had something special, an ability to be both funny and vulnerable simultaneously. The studio finally agreed, but with conditions. If the film flopped, Columbus would take full responsibility for the casting choice. Fact 4. The house cost more than the special effects budget. The iconic house in Winnetka, Illinois, wasn't chosen for its look. It was chosen because the owners agreed to let the production use it extensively. Most homeowners refuse major film productions. The disruption is too great. The risk of damage too high. But the house owners were fans of John Hughes and agreed to full access. That access cost more than anyone anticipated. The production had to pay for the family to live elsewhere for months. They had to insure the house for millions. They had to restore everything to original condition afterward. By the time filming wrapped, the house expenses exceeded the entire special effects budget. The studio was furious, arguing they'd paid luxury prices for what looked like a normal suburban home. Columbus argued the house was a character, as important as any actor. The layout, the stairs, the basement, all of it mattered for the trap sequences. Shooting in a real house instead of a set made everything feel authentic. Kids watching would believe this could happen in their house. The studio wasn't convinced until they saw test audience reactions. Kids loved the house. They wanted to live there. The investment had paid off. Fact 5. Joe Pesci actually bit Macaulay Culkin's finger. The scene where Harry threatens to bite Kevin's fingers is disturbing for good reason. Joe Pesci actually bit Macaulay Culkin during rehearsal. Not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to leave a mark. Culkin screamed, and Pesci immediately apologized, explaining he'd been method acting, getting into character. Columbus was horrified. Child actors are protected by strict rules. Pesci had crossed a line, even accidentally. But Culkin, surprisingly, wasn't upset. He said Pesci's intensity made the scene real, made him genuinely scared. Columbus decided to keep the footage and work around it, shooting the actual scene with careful choreography to ensure Culkin's safety. Pesci's method approach created tension on set. He stayed in character between takes, glaring at Culkin, muttering threats. Other actors found it unsettling. Culkin handled it professionally, understanding Pesci was trying to maintain the dynamic. But parents of other child actors complained, saying Pesci's behavior was inappropriate around children. The production had to establish clearer boundaries about method acting with minors. Fact 6. The burglars were originally supposed to be competent. In early drafts, Harry and Marv were dangerous. They were real criminals, genuinely threatening. The trap sequences were supposed to be tense, with Kevin barely surviving each encounter. John Hughes wrote it as a thriller with comedic elements, not a straight comedy. Chris Columbus pushed to make the burglars incompetent buffoons. He argued that dangerous criminals would make the film too scary for kids. Parents wouldn't want their children watching a realistic home invasion. The burglars needed to be harmless, idiotic, deserving of their punishment. Hughes resisted initially, saying incompetent villains would undermine tension. The compromise was brilliant. Make the burglars incompetent, but keep the consequences real. They fail repeatedly, but when they do get hurt, it looks painful. The paint cans to the face are cartoonish, but you see the damage. The blowtorch leaves a burn. The film walks a tightrope between comedy and consequence, and it works because Pesci and Stern sell the pain. Fact 7. The keep the change line was improvised. The famous pizza delivery scene where Kevin says, "Keep the change, you filthy animal," wasn't in the script. The script had Kevin silently taking the pizza. The gangster movie audio was there, but Kevin didn't repeat the line. Macaulay Culkin improvised it during a take, mimicking the movie's dialogue perfectly. Columbus loved it immediately and kept it in. But the studio worried it was too adult. Kids repeating "filthy animal" didn't seem family-friendly. Focus groups tested the scene, and kids found it hilarious. They loved Kevin imitating a gangster movie. The line stayed and became one of the most quoted in the film. The improvisation revealed Culkin's instincts. He understood Kevin's psychology. Kevin was playing tough, imitating what he'd seen in movies. Culkin didn't just act the line. He acted Kevin acting the line. That layered performance is what made the film work. Kevin never forgets he's a kid pretending to be brave. Fact 8. The tarantula scene traumatized the crew. Daniel Stern, who played Marv, has a genuine phobia of spiders. The script called for a tarantula to crawl on his face, and Stern initially refused. He told Columbus he'd do any other stunt, any other bit of physical comedy, but he couldn't do the spider. Columbus tried convincing him, explaining the spider was harmless, trained, safe. Stern didn't care. Phobias aren't rational. The production brought in an arachnid expert to work with Stern. They did exposure therapy, gradually introducing him to larger spiders. After 2 weeks, Stern agreed to try the scene, but only if they did it in one take. He couldn't endure multiple attempts. The shot had to be perfect. They filmed it with multiple cameras covering every angle. Stern's scream is genuine terror. The moment the tarantula touched his face, his body went into panic mode. He completed the scene, then immediately left set and didn't return for 2 days. The crew felt guilty, wondering if pushing him had been worth it. Columbus said the authenticity of Stern's fear made the scene unforgettable. Watching at home, audiences feel his terror. It's real. Fact 9. The film's budget tripled during production. Home Alone started with a modest $15 million budget. By the time filming wrapped, costs had ballooned to over $18 million. The overruns came from unexpected places. The house required more work than anticipated. Weather delayed outdoor shoots. The trap sequences required more takes than planned to look right. Fox executives panicked. They'd greenlit a small family comedy, and it was becoming an expensive gamble. They demanded Columbus cut corners, shoot faster, use cheaper effects. Columbus refused, arguing that cutting corners would make the film look cheap. The traps had to look real. The house had to feel lived in. Compromising would ruin everything. The studio threatened to shut down production. Columbus called John Hughes, who personally guaranteed an additional $3 million to complete the film properly. Hughes bet his own money on Home Alone succeeding. If it flopped, he'd lose millions. That confidence convinced Fox to release the additional funds needed, but relationships were damaged. Columbus later said he'd never felt more pressure than during those final weeks of production. Fact 10. Test audiences hated the original ending. The original ending showed Kevin reuniting with his family, then cut to Harry and Marv in jail, plotting revenge. The implication was clear. This wasn't over. The studio loved it, thinking it set up a sequel. Test audiences hated it. They said it made the ending feel incomplete, unsatisfying. They wanted closure, not a cliffhanger. Columbus shot a new ending in reshoots. Kevin reunites with his family, shares a moment with Old Man Marley, and the film ends on a warm emotional note. The new ending tested much better. Audiences left feeling satisfied, complete. The studio was frustrated they'd wasted money on the original ending, but they couldn't argue with the data. The ending change reflected a larger misunderstanding about what Home Alone was. The studio saw it as an action comedy. Audiences saw it as a story about family. They didn't care about the burglar's fate. They cared about Kevin finding his place in his family. Getting that right made all the difference. Fact 11. John Candy shot his scenes in 23 hours. John Candy appears briefly as Gus Polinski, the polka musician who helps Kevin's mom get home. His entire role was shot in a continuous 23-hour marathon session. Columbus needed Candy for a weekend, but Candy only had one day available before flying to another project. They shot from noon Saturday until 11 a.m. Sunday. Candy never complained, never asked for breaks. He improvised most of his dialogue, riffing about polka music and roadside festivals. Columbus let cameras roll, knowing Candy was creating gold. The funeral home story? Improvised. The polka band jokes? Improvised. Candy was a comedic genius working at the peak of his powers. The crew was exhausted, but Candy kept everyone energized. Between takes, he'd tell stories, do impressions, keep morale high. When filming finally wrapped, Candy went straight to the airport, flew to his next project, and started working again. He treated the marathon like a normal day. That work ethic and generosity made everyone grateful they'd gotten to work with him, even briefly. Fact 12. The paint can stunt sent 2 stuntmen to the hospital. The iconic paint can pendulum trap required extensive preparation. Stunt coordinators calculated angles, velocity, impact force. They used lightweight prop cans for most shots. But for the money shot, the close-up of the can hitting Marv's face, they needed weight for realistic movement. The first stuntman took the hit wrong. The can caught him at an odd angle, snapping his head back violently. He suffered a concussion and was hospitalized. The second attempt, with a different stuntman, resulted in a broken nose when the can's trajectory changed slightly during the swing. 2 injuries from one stunt created an insurance nightmare. Columbus wanted to scrap the shot and use a different trap. The stunt coordinator insisted they could do it safely with modifications. They adjusted the rig, added safety padding, practiced extensively. The third attempt worked perfectly, giving them the shot that's in the film. But the production lost a week to safety reviews, and insurance costs spiked. Fact 13. Kevin's scream was recorded at 3 different volumes. Macaulay Culkin's mirror scream required technical precision. The sound team recorded it at 3 different intensity levels. Soft for distant shots, medium for mid-range, loud for close-ups. Each version was mixed differently to ensure the scream worked across various playback systems. Culkin struggled initially to replicate the scream consistently. His voice would crack or weaken. Columbus worked with him, creating a backstory for why Kevin screamed. Not just surprise at his own appearance, but sudden realization of his complete aloneness. That emotional motivation helped Culkin deliver the scream with consistent intensity. The scream became iconic partly because of technical excellence. In theaters with proper sound systems, it hits perfectly. On TV broadcasts, it remains clear. On smartphones, it still works. That's rare. Most screams either sound too loud or too quiet, depending on playback. Culkin's scream, properly recorded and mixed, translates across all formats. Fact 14. The film's success destroyed other Christmas releases. Home Alone opened November 16, 1990, and immediately dominated. By its third weekend, it had killed every other family film's box office. Disney's The Rescuers Down Under crashed. Several smaller Christmas releases pulled out of theaters entirely. Home Alone wasn't just a hit. It was a black hole, consuming all box office oxygen. Studios were furious. They'd planned their Christmas releases around normal market dynamics. Nobody anticipated a film this dominant. Fox kept Home Alone in theaters through March 1991, continually taking market share from new releases. Theater owners begged for more prints. Fox couldn't print them fast enough. The success created unexpected problems. Macaulay Culkin became the most famous child actor alive overnight. Paparazzi stalked him. His parents fought over his earnings. His childhood essentially ended at age 10. The pressure of instant fame broke something in him that took years to repair. Success destroyed the innocence the film celebrated. Fact 15. Hughes refused to direct because of superstition. John Hughes was offered the director's chair multiple times. He refused every time, citing superstition. Hughes believed writers who directed their own scripts invited bad luck. He'd seen too many writer-directors compromise their vision under pressure. By staying only as writer and producer, he kept creative control without the directing burden. Columbus was his perfect proxy. Young enough to take direction, experienced enough to execute. Hughes attended most filming days, offering notes and adjustments. Technically, Columbus directed, but Hughes shaped every major decision. The collaboration worked because both men understood their roles. After Home Alone's success, Hughes received a $500,000 bonus. He donated half to children's hospitals, saying the film's profits came from kids enjoying his work, so kids should benefit. That quiet generosity reflected who Hughes was. He created stories about childhood because he remembered how it felt to be powerless, small, overlooked. Home Alone gave kids a fantasy where they had control, where they mattered, where they won. And for 2 hours, millions of kids believed they could defend their homes, defeat bad guys, and save Christmas. That belief, that empowerment, is why Home Alone endures. Not because of the traps or the slapstick, because it tells kids they're capable of more than adults think. That's a gift more valuable than any box office record. And it almost never happened, because everyone thought a kid alone at Christmas was too dark, too mean, too dangerous. Hughes knew better. He always knew better.